Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CLSR. And I'm your host, the counselor. And today we're going to be continuing on with self doubt. And we were talking the last time about one of the causes of the self doubt could be kind of people who are stuck in their past experiences, right? So the past mistakes they can't get past. However, there are other causes for some of this self doubt, and it could be how you were raised, your upbringing, right? Like just your childhood alone, how you were raised in those early days, has had some impact in some households for sure. Their upbringing plays a very big role when it comes to self doubt, right? If you were raised by parents, right, who were constantly putting you down, maybe telling you that you weren't good enough, that you didn't have what it takes, just, never had confidence in you. So maybe you adopted that feeling that because they didn't feel much about you, maybe you didn't feel much about yourself, right? So that's what you could be feeling. And then you just grow up feeling the way they made you feel. And if they didn't have any confidence, there's a handful, but a lot of people, the transference is real. People don't have confidence if they don't have people telling them certain things that they could believe in about themselves, right? So just understanding that is important. So if your upbringing was a little bit shaky and you didn't have the best person, you could have had a narcissistic parent, right? And it could really have gotten out of control. So you might be what? Going through those changes, still having those experiences messing you up, but you might have adopted that behavior about yourself just from what you heard. And it does happen. It does happen. You'd be surprised how the parents relate to some kids, right? It's amazing, but it does happen. But also what could cause some doubt is when we compare ourselves to other people, right? And we're living in a world of competition. We all know that. It seems like every sport, it's all about competition. And it's very understandable that we're going to compare ourselves to others. But when we do that, sometimes it's a little bit much. And it just causes some people to feel a lot of doubt, because they're always constantly comparing themselves, and they're never satisfied themselves, right? It's not unnatural for us to compare ourselves with other people, right? Just knowing that we live in this environment where everyone competes for everything, right? Whether it's a job, right? Whether it's a sport, it's all about competition. So it's not hard to get caught up in that stuff. Soon you'll find that you're looking at what they've got and what you don't have. And then you can start to lose yourself. So you really don't want to get into the comparison game, but there are people that do that. However, what you want to do is you want to be able to overcome self doubt. And one way to do that is just make sure that you're well grounded, you know? Just ground yourself and tell yourself, no, stop. Um, you're going to understand that you have some negative thoughts running through your mind. And you just got to stay present and focus on the positive, right? You try to prepare something positive, right? Wherever you go in your mind, make sure you're feeling that it's all good. Everything is going to be okay, right? I can do this, right? It's just something else that I got to learn, but I will get through. And just maintain that positive mindset, right? Embrace those happy memories, experiences, and focus on that and things that give you energy, healthy eating, right? A way of going about things. This will help you overcome some self doubt for sure, right? And just make sure you're taking care of yourself, right? Take breaks every once in a while, you know, get a boost of optimism, right? Sometimes you feel you're in situations that you can't get out of. Sometimes you just got to change it up just a little bit, right? Take a moment to relax, refocus, do something totally different, clear your mind, you know, do certain things that you're ready to do, you feel comfortable doing, just change it up a little bit. And your appreciations, have some appreciations, understand, right? You're optimistic and you're going in a positive direction. And that's how you got to live. You're going to have your ups and downs. And then when you get to some certain point, you can't be afraid to ask for help either. You got to be open minded. because it is important that we work on ourselves. And it's also important that we get some support, right? Whether it's a friend, a partner, a family member, a mentor, a supervisor, or even a counselor, psychologist, whatever. You just can't be afraid to get help if you need it. Some sort of support. It doesn't have to be long term, it just might be periodically when you need it. It's just something that you need to do. It needs to be part of your repertoire, as they say, right? You got to do certain things to get yourself to a certain point, and that may include challenging yourself a little bit. Slowly but surely challenging yourself, regaining that self confidence. And it just takes a few little things, right? You want to be successful, you want to gain that confidence and overcome that self doubt. You're going to have to do a little bit of work. And that may including writing things down, just as simple as that. Writing things out, keeping it very simple. Make question yourself, review once in a while, write down some of your experiences, right? Identify some of your strengths and your needs, right? Just write down these things. Write down things you're even grateful for, right? And stop comparing yourself to other people, right? Looking at what you have in front of you and appreciating that. Just doing little things here and there. But there's also a mindset that you have to adopt, and it has to be a positive mindset and the belief that you can do it, right? You have to have the belief right from the get go. You have to think from the positive perspective. You have to believe in it, right? And you want to have things go good for you, then you have to have that open mindset. Can't be closed. It has to be open, and you have to believe that there's a lot of good things that are going to happen. You're going to have your ups and downs, but for the most part, stay strong and keep your head up and believe, right? And believe each day you have that positive and change that out. Get rid of some of that negativity out of your life if you have to. If those are negative influencers, get rid of them, right? But that's what's going to help you move forward, that mindset right from the beginning. When it comes to treatment, there is treatment for self doubt, which may include cognitive behavioral therapy, otherwise known as CBT. As this is a form of therapy, it's quite effective usually in treating self doubt. People learn methods to challenge problematic ways of thinking, right? And this can lead to an improved mood and greater overall well being, right? So, someone who does have these experiences in relation to self doubt often, they come to realize that these negative beliefs that they are holding are not actually accurate or realistic. And then they start to change their way of thinking based on their understanding. So it's actually the one of the most popular forms of treatment, the cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's been quite effective actually in helping many people. Highly recommended. However, we also have to take into consideration there are three distinct types of self doubt: the imposter syndrome, self sabotaging, indecisiveness, right? These are different types of self doubt and they need to be looked at separately. Okay, so when you're thinking about like imposter syndrome, this is the irrational fear of being a fraud or not deserving of your accomplishments, right? No matter how far you climb up your ladder or how high you think you're going, you constantly feel like you're not as good as the paper you're presenting in front of them. For some reason, you get the impression that it's somehow a mistake that you got there. It wasn't earned. So that's when you're in feeling like that imposter. That's how you can relate to it. Do you understand? It's like you're getting the accolades, but you get the sense in your mind it's telling you that you don't deserve it. So you don't feel 100. You understand? So that's where that self doubt. And that's called the imposter syndrome. And it's just a form of self doubt, right? It's just a habit of doubting your own accomplishments and your abilities, right? And then you have the self sabotaging. We've heard of that, right? This is a tendency to undermine your own goals and values, after working on a project successfully, right? Sticking to your goals for a couple months. And then all of a sudden, you get off track, right? For a few days or weeks. And then you self sabotage yourself, because maybe you're not interested in doing it anymore, or you don't believe that you can continue it up. And it just becomes an anxiety, a little bit of fear in you. So you get off track, right? You do something to break that trend that you had going. Maybe it was a fear that you had of uncertainty of how far you thought it would go or if you could handle it or not. But that's self sabotaging behavior, right? As well as the third type is the indecisiveness, right? When you consistently struggle to make even small, minute decisions because you're in fear of making the wrong decision or the consequences that will result from making that decision, right? Doesn't matter. It could be something as simple as ordering food, right? When that doubt comes in or that worry appears, it has some negative consequences, right? And that actually ends up being turned into a little bit of anxiety. And then the person wants to relieve that anxiety, so they end up deferring their decision, right? Which leaves an opportunity for somebody else to take over. So they become indecisive, right? Just as that reaction to the anxiety, right? So they don't make any decisions. So that's how they become indecisive. Over the long term, like the longer you continue to experience this indecisiveness, it just has a tendency to erode away at your self esteem and your confidence. And it actually makes self doubt even worse or even stronger the longer it's left untended to. So people need to consider this. So, how do you know that you're not one of those individuals who has some serious self doubt? Well, there are some signs that could help you come to a decision, a rational decision. Well, one of them is if you have difficulty taking compliments, right? If you consistently get anxious or ashamed whenever someone gives you a compliment, right? That could be a sign that you don't value yourself. And that could actually lead to some chronic self doubt. And that means if you regularly struggle with taking compliments, not every once in a while. Every once in a while is quite common for the average person, but if you regularly struggle with accepting compliments, then this could be a problem with self doubt, right? Or if you're one of those individuals that's always seeking attention or reassurance, you know those individuals, reassurance seeking individuals. And they say there's a relation to low self esteem, right? Very common amongst people with self doubt. Like if you regularly doubt yourself and your decisions and your preferences, right? Or if you had somebody telling you all the time how dumb you were or untrustworthy you are, that's going to impact your esteem, especially if you know it wasn't true, but that's all you're receiving, right? It really can affect your whole identity and your sense of self, and which can be a real challenge for someone, especially when this constant doubt and criticism is weighing on your mind, right? It starts to wear on you emotionally. However, it doesn't have to be that way all the time. You can learn to free yourself from doubt for good. And it's just by applying some of the simple strategies that I mentioned earlier, like embrace your self doubt, right? Understand, just embrace it, right? Just understand it's just a strategy to free yourself. Embrace it. Understand you're going to have your doubts. Just don't let it overwhelm you. Learn to embrace your self doubt. Don't let it conquer you. Learn to understand it's just a part of you that you're just going to have to deal with every once in a while. Right? It doesn't need to cause you any stress. You can't ignore it. You can't run away from it. Self doubt will be there every once in a while. However, you can work through it. Right? Just acknowledge that you have self doubt and let it know that you don't like it. You're not afraid of it. However, you can talk to your self doubt and say, hey, you know what? I don't really like you. I know that you're there to try to help. I know you're going to be here every once in a while. You're going to peek your head up, but I'm getting back to whatever it is in my life. I understand it just happens. These things just happen. It just occur. And that's it. That's what you can say to your self doubt, that I realize you're there. It's part of life. I'm going to have certain things that happen but I can work through for the most part and have a positive mindset and just learn to embrace it, not fight it so much. When we fight it, we just cause ourselves excess stress. So just be a little bit skeptical of your thoughts, right? Remember, self doubt, it's not a personality trait, it's a mental habit. That's how simple it is. It's a simple mental habit, right? And you do need to keep in mind that you are not your thoughts, right? There is a distinction, right? You have to learn to separate them from who you are yourself, your thoughts, right? And one way to do this is by maybe naming. This is what the researchers said. Maybe naming this self-doubt and giving it a name and identity, like a little personality, and being aware of it, that it doesn't make your whole makeup. You know what I mean? Just it's a part of you, but it's not dominating, and that's the main point, is to understand, right, that it's not dominating you. And by giving it this name, it just shows, separation from it and yourself. So you have control over who you are. And there's also the restructuring of your thoughts. As we mentioned, the treatment earlier was CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Well, they have a strategy. It's called cognitive restructuring. And it basically helps you retrain your mind to produce more realistic and helpful thoughts instead of these overly negative and unhelpful ones, often general thoughts that we get in our head, but they are negative and are very unhelpful. So it just gives you a different frame of mind. Think of restructuring your thought, taking something that was an unhealthy self doubt experience and make it more realistic and helpful. Break it down in your mind. So just restructuring your thoughts can do that. Make the experience much more positive and pleasant. Another coping strategy that I find quite helpful is simply spending time with people who believe in you, who care about you, right? The ones who you can depend on and you enjoy being around, and they elicit the positive feelings and thoughts. They come to the surface with you. So if you could, that to me is very enlightening, and it really helps with the self doubt. Talking to people who care about you. I know I mentioned earlier about don't compare yourself to others, and that's one of the hardest things to do. I know, for people not to compare themselves to others, especially in this competitive world. However, I'd like to say there is another way you can compare yourself. Why don't you compare yourself to your past performance or who you were in the past as opposed to other people? Maybe and look at the positives and how you've improved and how you've grown. Compare yourself to your past, and that's how you can do comparisons, and you keep growing from that as an individual. And you must make sure that you show yourself compassion, right? You got to practice that stuff, right? Self-doubt should not be your default. And if you don't have a clear idea of what you're going to do in response to some situation that might not have gone off so well, or a difficult situation, or some sort of failure, it's going to be hard to stop you from doubting yourself if you can't recover from those things. So you got to kind of take it easy on yourself, right? You got to have some sort of support in there, and you got to accept support. And I would suggest it be like some positive models. Like, for example, if you want to learn a new instrument, and you might have someone older who already plays an instrument work with you, who you can learn from. Or if someone is in the gym who's exercising and you want to get, fit, just as fit as they are, then you're going to have to open your mind to getting into that type of thinking where, you practice some self-compassion and start treating yourself better. So showing yourself that self-compassion basically means is that after you have one of these mistakes or setbacks or bad experiences, instead of just beating yourself up, right, or doubting yourself, you could treat yourself better. Be good to yourself. Treat yourself and understand that it's okay, when you have an incident, to move forward. It's all right. It's just a way to get yourself moving forward, right? When you start to struggle, just understand that you can be good to yourself and say, hey, things are going to happen, right? I got to understand this. And if it gets to a point where you need to document, it's good to do that. Some people don't have the discipline for it, but I mentioned earlier that writing things down, even a gratitude, self gratitude diary, this is a good idea, right? Writing down your thoughts, celebrating your accomplishments, things that you've achieved, right? Positive experiences, things that have happened to you that are very encouraging, right? These are just minor things, but they're important things. Just a gratitude diary could be an uplifting game in itself. Well, people, I have to say, we've covered some good material today. And Self Doubt Part 2 is done. And I want to say thank you to my listeners. And please be like the wise old bird and spread the word. Take care of yourself.